So today we're going to look at the Jack Atlas deck, which is the Resonator slash Red Dragon Archfiend deck, and this is, I think, one of the best decks you can play in this format, the other one being Automats, and that's because the deck itself is really consistent, and the engine is good enough that it can play through interruption, and has not a lot of bad matchups, and even when you play against quote unquote bad matchups, you have enough non-engine room to kind of solve that issue as well. So what this deck aims to do is to make these really big Dark Dragon Synchron monsters, and you can just win against pretty much any setup that your opponent has, because Dark End Dragon has a really good removal effect that sends a monster to the graveyard, which means you get to bypass the protection that some of the monsters in this format have. For example, the Nears deck has Nears Fusion in the graveyard, which protects their monsters from being destroyed by battle or card effect, but your deck just gets to circumvent that. The Shark deck has a bunch of floating effects and destruction protection as well, and you also get to just ignore that completely as well. So even when you play against a deck like Blue Eyes, which has generally more attack than your monsters, you can still just send their monsters to the graveyard, or you can make your level 10 Synchro, which has more attack than Blue Eyes White Dragon. And even though the whole extra deck is basically packed with going second tools, the deck is still really good going first, because what you do going first is you make Red Rising Dragon, which is kind of a combo extender, and then you summon back the Crimson Resonator, summon two monsters from your deck, one of them being Red Resonator, which will gain you life points equal to the attack of one of the monsters on the field, so you will target your Red Rising Dragon and you gain 21, and then you end your turn with 4 defense position monsters on the field. And pretty much no deck in this format can OTK through 4 defense position monsters plus 6,100 life points. So that pretty much guarantees that you survive, and then next turn you can just use the broken going second tools that the deck has access to and win the game by either making Dark End Dragon to send your opponent's monsters to the graveyard, or you can just make Red Dragon Archfiend plus Archfiend Bane, which are just really big guys that can beat over pretty much anything. And because the skill is so consistent, you also get to play a lot of quick play spell non-engines that help you either going first or second by getting rid of your opponent's back row that might stop you, or stop their interruptions, like exactly Force Focus, because that card can be annoying sometimes. So the skill is a pretty good one. It's one of the best in this format. During the start of your main phase, you add Resonator Call to your hand as long as you have a Fiend in your hand, which more than half of your deck are Fiends. And then if you also have a Resonator monster, you add a Resonator command. So this also grabs you a level 4 non-tuner in case you draw a full hand of tuners. And you can usually use it to grab Wandering King Wildwind, but sometimes when you go first, you can use Red Sprinter instead, which is kind of a worse starter, but it is good sometimes if you know your opponent doesn't have any interruptions. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the deck. Let's go over some of the deck building decisions really quickly. We are keeping the triple Wildwind, of course, and I will not be playing less than 3 copies of Red Sprinter. Even though this card isn't the best card in the deck, you still want to have a healthy amount of level 4 non-tuner Fiend monsters, because they are pretty much the main way you extend in your deck. Because if your opponent uses the interruptions on your Red Rising Dragon after you summon a whole bunch of tuners, you will have way more tuners than non-tuners on the field, and in order to keep playing the game, you are required to have non-tuners to normal summon. And also the skill gets you access to Resonator Call, which grabs you a Resonator, so you don't really have to worry about not having enough tuners most of the time, because your skill just gives you more than enough tuners. So if you play less than 3 sprinters, you might run into an issue where you have one non-tuner and then a bunch of tuners, and then if your opponent gets rid of your non-tuner, you are stuck with only tuners, and then you can't extend and keep playing. We are playing triple Crimson Resonator, triple Red Resonator. We need a healthy amount of each to trigger our skill, and also for Crimson Resonator to summon from deck. And Crimson Resonator is a really good combo starter as well, because it special summons itself, which means you get to keep your normal summon after your opponent tries to interrupt your setup. Force Resonator is a mandatory card in this deck. I see some people remove this card because they think this card sucks. This card is the way you play through your opponent trying to interrupt you by getting rid of your Red Rising Dragon, because if you don't play this card, what will happen is that you summon Red Rising Dragon in your EMZ, and then you revive your Crimson Resonator, and then you summon the two tuners from the deck, and then if your opponent has something like a Book of Moon, Offerings to the Doomed, or whatever, Dark Magical Circle Banish, whatever, if your opponent has a way to get rid of your Red Rising Dragon, what will happen is that you will have 3 level 2 tuners on your field, and you have no zones to summon non-tuners, and you will be forced to end your turn. And that is not good. And you can solve this by playing a copy of Force Resonator, because this card, even though its effect sucks, it does send itself from the field to the graveyard. So in a situation where your field is clogged with only tuners, you can send itself to the graveyard, and then use your normal summon on the level 4 non-tuner that you have in your hand, and then just keep playing. For non-engine, we're playing triple MST, triple Book of Moon, double Cosmic Cyclone, just cards that help us get rid of potential interruptions that our opponent might have. And yeah, extra deck is pretty much exactly the same, not much to talk about. Let's have a look at some replays. Okay, first replay, we're playing against the other best deck in the format, which is Automat. I feel like Automat is pretty much widely recognized as the best deck in the format, and I kind of agree, but Resonator is a pretty close second as well. Our opponent is going first, which is good news for us, because Automat is one of those decks that is a lot more scary going second because of all of their going second options, and a lot less scary when they are going first, because unlike Resonators, they can't set up kind of an unbreakable turn 1 board that guarantees that they don't lose. Their turn 1 board mainly consists of a rank 6 plus a Utopia, and they either make Force Focus when they know that they're playing against a deck that plays high level monsters like our deck, or they make M7 to grab themselves follow-up. So they're gonna make Cowboy. I don't know why they're making Cowboy. I guess they have enough material to do that, but if I was playing the deck, I would just keep the extra material for follow-up, and I won't make Cowboy, but they're probably afraid that they are gonna lose if they don't put enough monsters on the field, because our deck is pretty good at OTKing. So our hand isn't particularly good because of the 3 red sprinters in our hand, but we do have the Book of Moon to at least contest the Force Focus. Even if we don't have the Book of Moon, because our opponent doesn't have any back row, we can still play through the 1 negate. But because we have the Book of Moon, this allows us to combo further and potentially win this turn. So we're gonna make a Red Rising Dragon and then revive back to Crimson. Red Resonator will be able to gain life points. We can target our opponent's monster when our opponent monster has more attack than our Red Rising, so we can gain just a bit more life points. And then we can make a second Red Rising after we make the Dark End to send. Red Rising is not once per turn, so we can revive another tuner in the graveyard. We'll make a copy of Red Dragon Archfiend, and then we can beat over the Force Focus and then trigger the effect of Red Dragon Archfiend to blow up the defense position monsters. And I'm going to attack again with Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane and then pass turn. So even though we can't really OTK this turn because of the red sprinters in our hand, we can still attempt to wall up by just having really big guys. So he's forced to use both of his Gagaga bolts to blow up our monsters, which is unfortunate, but that's pretty much all he could do. He used up all of his resources. He can attack twice, but because we gained so much life points, he can't OTK, and we have more than enough follow-up to win on our next turn. Okay, next replay we're playing against Stardust or Synchron, which I think is just straight up a worse version of Resonators. Like, it's a Synchro deck that does pretty much the same thing, but all of their monsters are smaller, the type of removal is worse, and it's just easier to interrupt their deck in general. But they're going first, so they don't have to really worry about that. They're gonna do the typical combo, just making Junk Warrior, sick animation incoming, and then mandatory effect of Junk Warrior will gain a bit of attack, I guess. They'll revive back the Junk Synchron, make a Stardust, and that is one singular pop in his back row. And because our deck is so good at playing through interruptions, we don't even need to waste our Book of Moon on the Stardust Dragon, and we can keep it for our opponent's next turn in case they have something crazy that prevents us from winning this turn. We'll play it a bit safe, and we'll keep the Book of Moon, and instead we'll just try to force through our opponent's free set back row with Engine alone. And I'm assuming that some of his back row are going to be stuff like MST or Cosmic, you know, stuff that don't actually do anything. So our opponent will try to pop, we can just keep comboing because our deck is really good. Our opponent will book one of our monsters, that's still fine because we have enough extenders in our hand. We can go Resonator Command, add ourselves the third Wild Wind, summon itself, and then we can try to Synchro Summon, but he does have the Raigeki Break to contest that as well. And as you can see, he has a Sphere Karibo, so it was a good idea to keep the Book of Moon for our opponent's turn. So I don't think I need to book one of his monsters because the Hedgehog is banished, but I accidentally activated Book of Moon, but I don't think that would matter because I think we just win anyway. Now we're gonna make a Archfiend Bane, beat over our opponent's monster with a set MST. Opponent draws a MST, which is funny. We'll still use our own MST because we have a Chronicle effect and that gives us more assessment points. But that should be lights out for him. We have enough for lethal by punching with one of our tiny Resonators for enough damage for lethal. Okay, in our third replay, we're again playing against another Synchron deck, but this time we're going first. Our hand isn't exactly the best, we don't really have any non-engine in our hand, but it's still good enough to at least do the combo and have enough follow-up for our next turn as well, so we can't really complain too much. We'll actually be using the Red Sprinter when we go first because Red Sprinter is a lot less good when going second, and in a world where we know that our opponent doesn't really have any interruptions, it's better card value than using Wild Wind, and we can keep the Wild Wind for our next turn, and this card will be better when we play into our opponent's interruptions because this card special summons and doesn't normal summon. Our opponent will obviously be doing the exact same combo that they always do, but they make something pretty interesting. They make Red Dragon Archfiend, which is a card that is not in the Yusei starter deck, and because I'm not expecting the Red Dragon Archfiend, I put all of my monsters in defense, but that just lets him blow up every single monster that we have. But that's still fine because we obviously have the life point boost, and so we are guaranteed to not lose. We'll pop one of his back row. We know that the middle one is a shooting star, so we don't have to worry about that. So we pop one of the other two. We unfortunately hit a bad card, which is another MST, which means our opponent has a Book of Moon to flip our monster face down. But we still have a bit of gas left, obviously because we have the special summon from the Wild Wind and our opponent incorrectly flips the non-tuner face down. That's like the other thing to worry about when you play against a Red Dragon Archfiend deck, is that you don't really know whether to interrupt the tuner or the non-tuner. Like, it makes sense to flip the non-tuner face down because there are more Resonators than non-tuners, but in situations like this game right here, you might get punished if you flip the wrong monster face down, and there really isn't a way to make sure that you flip the right monster. You kinda just have to guess. So we can still crash with our opponent's Red Dragon Archfiend, even if our opponent changes our monster to defense with Sphere Karibo. And I think that should be it, because we have a Book of Boon to contest our opponent's combo starter. We of course can summon back the two tuners, one from deck and one from grave, and gain life points as well. And these monsters aren't that big, but they allow us to tribute them for the revive next turn. But our opponent realizes that and just he just loses himself, I guess. So yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.